Hello, I'm Chris DeBikis, Lead Service Technician with Heidolph North America, and today I'm going to be discussing with you the controller functions of your HiVap Industrial Distimatic. So one of the first things you'll notice as soon as you power on the Distimatic is on the panel itself, it'll start booting up. This will take a couple seconds, and then this will get us to our menu to be able to choose whether or not we want timer mode or sensor mode. So after the unit boots up, we're going to be at our select mode, and at this point we could choose between timer mode or sensor mode. Now to choose timer mode, we're going to press and hold the set button, press down that right arrow, and now we're going to get to start stop. Once we're at the start stop mode, you're going to want to press the start stop button, and what that's going to do is going to engage your 3 two-way valve and allow vacuum to start pulling on the system. What's important about this is before you actually start bringing product into your evaporation flask, you will want all your set points to achieve the value that you locked in. So if we have our vacuum set at 100 millibar, we want to pull our vacuum down to 100 millibar, and then we're going to start the filling process. Next, to start the filling process, as it says on the screen, please press refill to start initial filling. Just hit the refill button. And what that'll wind up doing right now on the timer mode, we have a countdown for 10 seconds. That means the flask will fill up for 10 seconds. And then you'll notice it'll kick over to 4 minutes. That's our evaporation time. So what we're doing in the timer mode is we're essentially shooting in low doses into the evaporation flask. That makes for a easier way to pull off your solvent. And then if you're using cannabis, you're going to start seeing a gold ring develop on the flask. Now, if you needed to change any of the parameters throughout the run, what you're going to want to do is press the parameters button. And at this point here, we have a couple different options for the timer mode. This step here allows us to set our parameters for the fill time, the evaporation time, and how many steps. So essentially, this is going to be a 10-second fill, 4-minute evaporations for 100 steps. So every time we achieve 4 minutes and 10 seconds, that's 1 step. So at 8:20, that's going to be step 2, and so on. Next, this process will be after those 100 steps ended. This is where the process comes in, your cycles. So if we have 5 cycles here, we are going to go through 100 steps 5 times, or that's going to be 500 steps. Essentially, after each one of our 100 steps, the system is programmed at this point to remove whatever residue you have in the flask, and then it'll start right back over again. So your next screen is the end process. This will essentially begin when either your product vessel is empty or you've achieved your final cycle. And what this will wind up doing is the unit itself will just act as a normal rotary evaporator for 60 minutes until all your solvent is removed. This time can be adjustable to fit your process. And this one here, it says end process draining. We have the ability at this point to either turn the pumps on and off during the end process. And residue pump during process, at this point here, we could turn the pump on or off. Essentially, what will wind up happening is after each cycle is done, your evaporation flask will be drained, and you have the option of either doing it automatically or doing it manually. Okay, the other mode we get to work with is the sensor mode. So just like we did to choose timer mode, we want to choose sensor mode, but this time we'll use the left arrow. Now we're back at start stop. Again, hit the start stop button, start pulling vacuum. And then the refill drain button will start filling the evap flask. And in the parameter menu in this, you'll notice it's a little bit different than the timer mode because now we have time to refill. Essentially what this means is that the sensor that's inside the evaporation flask is detecting your product level inside the evaporation flask. So when it does not detect product for 10 seconds, that's when the refill valve will open up and allow more product to get pulled into the system. The next screen, extra time to drain off. Again, If the evaporation rate has remained stagnant and your level is not decreasing, which would mean at this point that you have a level of oil, or you have a high amount of oil inside the flask, which is not allowing any kind of drop in product in the evap flask. So therefore, the product fill sensor inside the flask will determine that nothing's dropping for more than 90 minutes right now, so it's time to pull out that residue. So if this ever happens while you're running and you still have product available, as soon as that product gets drawn out of the evap flask, and if there's product still available ready to fill the flask, your process will start all over again. Again, here's our drain times. Usually on the condensate drain, 1 minute, 10 seconds is sufficient to drain approximately 850 mils out of that condensate receiver. And then the residue pump, again, that's something that's going to be decided by you depending on how much volume of material you're going to have in the evap flask. The end process, again, we have this one here set for 60 minutes. So that will occur when the product vessel, the product supply vessel that is on the Distimatic box comes empty. You'll start seeing the end process begin. End process draining. Again, this is where you have the option of turning the condensate pump on or off, same with the residue pump. And as I discussed earlier, the residue pump on during process, you have that option to turn it on and off from here. Okay, so if you ever have to change any of the values in the parameter menu, what you're going to need to do is press the parameter button. And if you want to change the time to refill, press the set button. Hold that down until you get a flashing underscore on the first digit, then hit apply, and now you'll see a solid cursor flashing. In order to change the values, just use your arrows from left to right to move the cursor, and then you could use the arrows up and down in order to change the value of the numbers. So once you have your desired time locked in order to back out and store that number, you're going to hit apply and then set. Now this is the process for doing all the changes necessary to your parameters, even on the parameter menus that say on and off, and then they have multiple lines. So in order to change from on to off, press and hold the set button, hit the apply button, and use your arrow, up or down arrow, to turn the pump on or off. And again, to back out and lock it in, hit apply. And now we want to change the residue button, so we'll leave the flashing underscore on the screen, press the down arrow, the right arrow, and now we're on the residue line, hit apply, and at this point here you could turn the residue pump on or off. We'll turn it off, hit apply, and set, and now your parameters are locked in. Thanks again for watching these videos. Again, my name's Chris DeBikis, and if you have any questions, you can get in touch with me, my contact info below.